Hello and welcome to the Musical Instrument Investigator. Today we are back on the website of Amati Auctions based in the UK, and we're going to have a look at their affordable auction. So this is the one where the stuff which needs a bit of repair, maybe the provenance is a bit uncertain, just kind of things like that, things that need a bit of work in one way or another. This particular auction is ending on the 8th of December, which is actually tomorrow, so it's the 7th today, which will be quite interesting because we'll see an indication of the way that some of the prices are going. Historically with Amati, all the final bidding happens right at the last moment, so things will jump up in price considerably, but usually if you see a fair bit of bidding at the beginning, then you see a lot more towards the end. 22% buyer's premium is normal for Amati at the moment. Once again, this is based in the UK, so if you're outside of the UK, if you're in Europe or international, then you need to kind of check the shipping and exports and stuff like that, and just make sure that you know what's happening. So there's just shy of about 300 items, I think, in this auction, so we should probably just get on with it really, otherwise it's gonna last forever, this video. So let's have a look what we've got here. So we have a cello unlabeled. That's the back. Let's scroll. Let's have a quick look just at the condition report. Woodworm on back and scroll. So you can see some woodworm on the side mark there. We won't go into too many of these condition reports just because of time, and that was £800 bid on that so far. Another cello unlabeled here. This looks a bit more standard kind of trade cello. 475 is on that, comes with a bow. Another unlabeled cello. Looks like the varnish has been removed in the front. A bit of crackulature. Varnish there. 350's current bid. Don't forget the Amati has the 360 viewer here. We won't get into that at the moment, but maybe a bit later. A cello labelled Margaret E. Brindley, West Bridgeford and Newark, 1992. Current bid 375. So I don't think you can take that much effort to look up to see who may have studied at Newark in 1992. So possibly that is it is what it claims to be, but who knows? You can see some kind of scuff marks on the varnish. And now we have a cello labelled Viola Paris, 2100 is the current bid, so that's quite popular. And then moving on, cello labelled Michele Angie Garini, 350 is the current bid on that. An object, excellent. That's what we like. We like a good object. Curious, looks like some kind of viol kind of type thing, arpeggione type thing, whatever. More like just a viol, actually, I think. Okay, interesting. A viola unlabeled. Another viola unlabeled. This looks fairly standard for 550. Interesting. A viola labelled Joseph Guarnerius, 600 is the current bid. I mean, these look like just fairly standard trade instruments to me, but anyhow, a viola unlabeled, 110 is the current bid. Quite a nice back on that, double purfling Magini style thing. Another unlabeled viola. Once again, looks fairly tradey. So 100 is the current bid on that. Another viola unlabeled. This one looks slightly more interesting. That's had a lot of work done. Be curious to see what the what this says. Open cracks everywhere, closed cracks. It's had some bizarre kind of work to it. It's vaguely interesting though. 140 current bid. Another Viola unlabelled, looks fairly modern. 60 is the bid. This is a very interesting instrument. Looks like another one of these kind of converted viol type things that we see lots of these, which is also a little bit random, but these kind of Matthew Hardy almost type things, that when he's converting old Baroque Norman viols and things like that into violas, but completely speculative. Extensive woodworm damage throughout instrument. Yeah, look at that. That's a woodworm party, but £650. It's not putting people off. They like it. They like the woodworm. A violin labelled, made by W.M. Williams, Glasgow, 120. That's the current bid. Looks interesting. Violin labelled Antonio Stradivarius. £550, that's popular. 3/4 sized viola labelled the Henman Tertis viola. Interesting. Dedicated to the memory of Lionel Tertis, Beer and Sons. Interesting Tertis model. Violin labelled Laurentius Storioni. Interesting varnish job there. Violin labelled JTL, so it's kind of trade thing. Violin unlabelled, looks like another trade type deal. A violin unlabelled. This looks interesting, inked purfling, so it looks potentially 18th century. Lots and lots of closed cracks there. £140 the current estimate on that. It's interesting enough, but in a terrible condition. Violin unlabelled. It's just another modern thing. Violin unlabelled. It's quite narrow. Just looks like a kind of trade instrument. Violin labelled Margaret Eileen Brindley. Newark, same maker as the cello. It's got 190 on that so far. Violin labelled Brindley again, so I guess those of you that may know the maker will know if this is the work of that maker or not. I cannot comment. A violin branded WSB. That's a Medifino type thing. Violin labelled Margaret Brindley. Interesting craquelature on the violin. The models do look fairly similar. The work looks fairly consistent. Another Newark type thing. Another Brindley, so there's a whole load of them. They do look to have some similar traits. That's an interesting scroll on that one. That's quite squat together. A Viola unlabelled. 180s bid on that. A Viola inscribed Margaret Brindley, so we've got the Brindley collection here. Another one with these kind of quite scroll quite close to the main peg box. Another Viola Brindley. Interesting. Curious. I'll have to look up this maker and see what this is. Viola unlabelled. I wonder if that comes from the same group, because that looks similar as well to the other Brindley ones. Violin labelled Jacobus Steiner. It's kind of interesting. 550. It's popular. Violin unlabelled. This is another kind of interesting looking one, 70 on that. Violin labelled Joseph Guarnerius. This is also a slightly curious one. 300 is current bid. Nasty cheek patches there. Violin labelled Steiner. Interesting back. And a violin unlabelled. Fairly standard. A violin labelled copy of Stradivari. It's pretty normal. A violin labelled copy of Joseph Guarnerius. It's got a funky varnish, but still very much tradey type thing. Violin unlabelled. It looks like this kind of, I was going to say the Hopf shape, and just a low quality Hopf violin. The Strad label. Looks fairly standard. Charles violin unlabelled. 40 is the current bid. Violin unlabelled. Pretty standard. Violin inscribed H. Sebefu. Okay. Violin labelled H. Nijkampf Jr. Violin labelled Joseph Guarnerius, and it has the Guarneri type F holes. 220 is the bid on that. A violin labelled H. Hieronymus. Looks fairly standard fare. A violin labelled Sti Cecile. Nasty button crack there. Violin labelled Gewa, so this is a modern student instrument. 3/4 size violin, unlabelled. $70 bid on that. 3/4 size violin, unlabelled. Interesting back on that, 70 bid. Violin unlabelled. Violin with a Strad label. Half size violin, Stentor, so this is just another student instrument. Interesting varnish going on there. Someone wants it for £10 anyway. 3/4 size violin. Three-quarter size violin as well. So tradey type thing. Violin inscribed N. Bourguignon. £1,000 there, so that must be something to someone. A violin labelled Edrio Edreb. Cremona 1992. Current bid is £40. Violin unlabelled. This looks once again like one of the Hopf type violins, but it's got a neck graft on this, so this one I think is actually a bit older, so this could actually be an earlier 19th or maybe a bit late 18th type Hopf, so that could be actually quite an interesting violin. Violin label J Blanc, Paris. Violin labelled Puglisi Real. Interesting F holes, but other than that, looks fairly normal. Oh, Viola, that was, sorry. Violin labelled manufactured in Berlin, special copy of Nicholas Amati. Interesting back. A violin unlabelled. Violin labelled Hammer & Co. Looks in fairly good condition and kind of Guarneri type F holes again. Another Strad copy label. Okay. Violin label Johannes Franciscus Presenda Raphael, 550 bid on that. Definitely needs a bit of work, but clearly some people see something in that, so that will probably shoot up. Violin, another Strad label. Some interesting things in this auction. I've had a quick skirt around. So, violin label Jewel Heinrich Zimmermann, 130 is the bid on that so far. Bit of damage at the back. Violin label Charles Puthold, 45 is the bid on that. Violin unlabelled. Another Strad labelled violin. A violin unlabelled. Another unlabelled violin there. Okay. 3/4 size violin without a label. There's a lot of items in this auction. Violin labelled Ludwig Gleisel Jr. Violin labelled copy of Paolo Maggini. It's another kind of trade-ish violin there. A violin labelled copy of Strad. Just another trade violin. Another Steiner label with this kind of interesting purfling. Some people are quite a fan of that. 425, that seems quite a lot. A violin label Paul Bailey. A 3/4 violin labelled Le Parisien. A violin unlabelled. Violin labelled Gabriel Dijon. Looks very tradey. Seven-eighths size violin, unlabelled. This is actually a little bit interesting, worth on the 3D view. Interesting shape. Just quickly look what the yeah, there's a lot of open cracks, a lot of closed ones, so it's in a bit of a state. Half-size violin, unlabelled. That's quite sweet. A violin labelled Johannes Franciscus Presenda. So another one with that label on. 600 is bid for that. A violin unlabelled, kind of trade instrument. Violin labelled Joseph Antonius Roger. Violin unlabelled. This once again looks like a Hopf kind of type thing. 195 is the 190, sorry, is the current bid. Another Strad labelled instrument, missing part of its head. Excellent. Still got some bids though. Violin labelled Antonio Stradivari. Violin Maidstone, it's a pretty generic German instrument. An unlabelled violin. Some unfortunate cheek repairs there. The violin unlabelled. Needs a bit of scroll repair. Half size violin, Strad label. Violin unlabelled. Another violin unlabelled. That's kind of slightly curious. Be interesting to see that. £60 is the current bid on that. Some of the things like that are good to see in person sometimes. Violin unlabelled. This looks very tradey. Another violin unlabelled. Violin labelled Antonio Stradivari. We must be coming towards some bows soon, surely, because we haven't seen any bows for a while. Violin labelled the Maidstone. Violin unlabelled. There's a lot of items. A violin unlabelled. This looks like another Hopf shape instrument, but only £20 bid on this one. 3/4 size violin, another Maidstone. Violin labelled Strad. A violin unlabelled. Interesting wood choice. Half size violin. A violin unlabelled. That's a curious one. £20 on that. This is the type of thing that's bonkers enough that could actually be like Italian, like amateur Italian or something like that. That is an interesting one for sure. 108, that's one to watch. 3/4 size violin, Strad label. Half size violin, unlabelled. Three-quarter size violin. A violin unlabelled. Violin labelled, made by AC Lancaster in Cornwall. Violin labelled Stradivari. Interesting back. Violin labelled but unreadable. A violin, unlabelled. Another violin, unlabelled. A violin labelled Joseph Guarnerius. Violin labelled copy de Di Conetti. Violin labelled Colin Mazar. 170 is the bid so far. A violin unlabelled. Three-quarter size violin. Violin unlabelled. Had some varnish fiddling. Violin labelled W.H. Granger, maker in Leicester. Could be correct. 1937. It's quite a dark red varnish. It's plausible. Violin labelled Nicholas Amatus. Something like that trade type thing. Violin labelled Lutherie Artistique Quattro. Violin, another Artistique Quattro. Violin labelled Pietro Antonio Figlo di Carlo Ferdinando Landolfi. Interesting wood choice on the back. Be curious just to see what the condition report is. Cracked to the back and scroll, so unfortunate back crack, but £130. There's still people interested. Violin unlabelled there. We're still going on violins, no bows so far. Violin labelled Leon Mougenot. Violin labelled Giorgio Corsini. £200 is bid on that. Violin labelled Antonio Amatus. Interesting back. Varnishes all over the place. Violin branded Theriot. Interesting corners on this one. 110 is the bid. Let's have just a quick look at the sides. Interesting. A violin unlabelled. A violin labelled Paolo Giacomelli. Violin labelled made by W. Lamzed. Alumnus B. Banks, Salisbury. Current bid £70. This is fairly interesting as well. Interested to see the it's turning this. A nasty worm there. It's a curious looking one, that one. A violin labelled J. Didlo. A violin unlabelled. A violin labelled T. Fielding. Standard E trade thing. A violin labelled the Elysia. Violin labelled Japanese copy. A violin unlabelled. Violin labelled Stradivari. A violin unlabelled. Well, no sign of running out of violins. A violin labelled Stradivari. Let's just have a quick look there. Interesting. Violin unlabelled. Violin labelled The Maidstone. Three violins here. Kind of children's stuff. Nickel-mounted cello bow, stamped K. Braun. An alloy-mounted cello bow, unstamped. Interesting. Silver-mounted cello bow, unstamped. Nickel-mounted cello bow, unstamped. Interesting kind of transitional frog. Nickel-mounted cello bow, stamped Alphonse Rydell. Nickel-mounted cello bow, unstamped. Nickel-mounted cello bow, unstamped. Silver-mounted cello bow, unstamped. Silver-mounted cello bow, stamped E.A. Ushar. Missing the button there. A nickel-mounted viola bow, unstamped. A silver-mounted viola bow, stamped Francolossi. A nickel-mounted viola bow, unstamped. Nickel-mounted viola bow, unstamped. Silver-mounted cello bow, unstamped. Nickel-mounted viola bow, unstamped. A nickel-mounted viola bow, unstamped. Silver-mounted violin bow, stamped Vorin. A silver-mounted violin bow, stamped Bausch. A nickel-mounted violin bow, stamped F.C. Frechner. A nickel-mounted violin bow, stamped Vorin. A nickel-mounted violin bow, unstamped. Silver-mounted violin bow, unstamped. Nickel-mounted violin bow, stamped Dodd. Okay. Nickel-mounted violin bow, stamped C. Mullins. Nickel-mounted violin bow, unstamped. A bone-mounted violin bow, unstamped. Okay. A nickel-mounted violin bow, stamped Arthur Thoma. A nickel-mounted violin bow, stamped Cuneo Huri. A nickel-mounted violin bow, stamped N. Lowry. A nickel-mounted violin bow, stamped Colin Mazza. A nickel-mounted violin bow, stamped Taut. Nickel-mounted violin bow, stamped H.R. Frechner. A silver-mounted violin bow, unstamped. A nickel-mounted violin bow, stamped Vickers. A silver-mounted violin bow, stamped Hill. And a nickel-mounted violin bow, stamped Arnold Voigt. A nickel-mounted violin bow, stamped Paul Jombar. A nickel-mounted violin bow, stamped J.P. Gabriel. A silver-mounted bow, stamped E. Blondelet. It's had some damage to the stick there. Nickel-mounted violin bow, unstamped. Nickel-mounted violin bow, unstamped. Nickel-mounted violin bow, unstamped. A nickel-mounted violin bow, unstamped. A nickel-mounted violin bow, unstamped again. A nickel-mounted violin bow, unstamped. Actually, that's kind of interesting. Let's just have a quick look at this. Interesting frog and button on that one. That's a bit curious. Not really quite sure that don't think that button belongs. Just a little bit of an oddity. Another nickel-mounted violin bow, unstamped. Another nickel-mounted violin bow, unstamped. An unmounted violin bow, unstamped. Nickel-mounted violin bow, unstamped. Nickel-mounted violin bow, unstamped. Another nickel-mounted violin bow, unstamped. Another nickel-mounted violin bow, unstamped. Nickel-mounted violin bow, unstamped. A nickel-mounted violin bow, stamped John Brazil. A silver-mounted cello bow, stamped H.R. Frechner. A silver-mounted cello bow, stamped K. Vandermeer. Nickel-mounted cello bow, unstamped. A silver-mounted violin bow, stamped B. Schwartz. A nickel-mounted double bass bow. Look at that. Nick mounted double bass bow. Okay. 3 violin bows, various lengths. It's interesting. It's like a selection of Baroque bows, Baroque and a kind of transitional classical bow. It's quite curious. These two probably Chinese, but the other one is actually interesting. That's quite an interesting lot. £70. Yeah. 20 violin bows and 3 cello bows, various lengths. 4 bows, various lengths. 3 cello bows, 5 violin bows. 23 violin bows, 7 cello bows and 2 sticks. 27 violin bows, 3 cello bows, 2 sticks. So it's all 23 violin bows, 1 cello bow and 7 sticks, various lengths. 17 violin bows, 16 cello bows and 2 sticks. Wow, that's quite a lot. 4 bows, various lengths. 4 cello bows, various lengths. 12 violin bows, various lengths. 10 violin bows, various lengths. Another 14 violin bows, various lengths. That's a whole load of bows. 6 violin bows, 1 cello bow and 7 sticks, various lengths. 6 violin bows, 1 cello bow and 9 sticks, various lengths. 6 violin bows, 2 cello bows and 8 sticks, varying lengths. 14 violin bows, various lengths. 23 violin bow sticks and 2 cello bow sticks, various lengths. 26 violin bow sticks and 4 cello bow sticks, various lengths. 12 violin sticks, various lengths. The Dictionary of Violin and Bow Makers, John Dilworth. Monograph Collections, volumes 1, 2 and 3 by Dilworth. Violins book. Violin Bridges by Gerald Kilbride. Universal Dictionary of Violin and Bow Makers. Dictionary of Contemporary Violin and Bow Makers, Cyril Woodcock. Violin, its famous makers and their imitators by George Hart. Dictionary of British Violin and Bow Makers by Plowright. 2 books, Antonio Stradivari and The Bow, Use in History. Another one of the British Violin Dictionary. Sotheby's Catalogues, Part 1, Menuhin Collection. 2 books, Antonio Stradivari and Contemporary Violin Makers. Book about the cello. History of the Cello. 2 books, King Joseph and the Violin Hunter. Violin Making with Folding Plans. More things about violins. Books on Mircore luthiers. More Mircore luthiers. 2-slot bow case. 12-slot bow case. 6-slot bow case, branded Kingham. 6-slot bow case, branded Kingham. Another 6-slot bow case, another bow case, another bow case, 2-slot bow case, 4-slot bow case, 6-slot bow case, 6-slot bow case, cello case branded Gira, cello base branded Bam, case branded Bam, cello case branded Hema, cello case, another cello case, another cello case, another cello case, a black wooden cello case, a viola case branded Hill, a viola case branded Forenza, violin case branded Masafia, an old case, a violin case branded Jaeger, violin case, a 4-pack violin case, a violin case, violin case branded JTL, a violin case branded Gewa, a violin case. And is that it? Are we at the end? Oh no, a blue violin case. It just got stuck for a second. 7 signed concert programs. A reproduction of a translated Niccolo Paganini letter. And is that the end, I think? Or is it back to catalogue? Let's just double check that that is the last thing. That's lot 280. Yep, that is the last one. Okay, so that has been the Amati auction, the affordable. Quite interesting, a few interesting things, some stuff pretty normal, pretty average, but quite a lot of stuff, some interesting things, and yeah, definitely good to look through. So if you're interested, I'll put a link in the description. So this auction's finishing tomorrow. Yeah, if you're interested, just check it out. And as always, thanks for watching, and ciao for now. Bye. Many thanks for tuning in to the Musical Instrument Investigator. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, then please like, subscribe and turn on notifications, and watch out for the next video coming soon.